Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com with your weekly news roundup for September 24th, 2023. Every week, I take a look at some headlines, news stories, and articles from across our great state. So pour yourself a cup of coffee and let's see what's in the news this week. Very interesting story here, and I know this is a little bit of an older article, but I still think it was very interesting to bring up. Centersquare.com. Recent Colorado regulations increase taxes and fees by $2 billion. Wow. So these regulations, taxes, fees, they're pulling money out of the economy, pulling money away from private sector, pulling money away from businesses, from individuals, and taking it to the state. When that happens, it reduces the amount of private capital available for investments, for employers to hire people, for individuals to retire. Pulling money away from the economy it hurts. It hurts average working class people. Let's take a look here at the article. The real wages and purchasing power of Coloradans declined during the last few years in part to major new laws passed, a report says. So you got to think about it. One of the biggest news stories, one of the biggest polling issues in our state is affordability, the cost of living, rising costs of goods, gas, housing, whatever it is. Life is getting more expensive and people's wages are not keeping up with it. It is causing serious problems for people living on the margins and it's affecting more people every couple months, it seems. So when you think about that wages and then purchasing power, which is how much your money is worth, the fact that these are declining due to new laws passed shows you who's responsible. This inflation is not due to the greed of businesses. It's not this naturally occurring situation in our economy. It's the fact that the government is making it more expensive to live, passing new laws, making it harder for businesses to be successful, and, and incentivizing people not working, honestly. The latest in a series of reports on Colorado's economic competitiveness by the Common Sense Institute analyzed recent legislation creating or expanding civil causes of action. Since 2019, the report said approximately 43 new laws resulted in various shifts of costs to businesses, which eventually will be passed on to consumers through higher prices. That's something I think a lot of these socialist politicians, they know it, but they don't really want to talk about it. When they go after businesses, they go after landlords, they go after, wealthy people in society. Well, those costs get passed on other places, right? These businesses still need to make money. They still need to be able to operate. A lot of businesses, especially small businesses, are operating on the margins of what they can produce, what they can bring in for money. So these extra costs, and the only way these businesses can stay in business really is to pass those costs on to the consumers. And that's just economic reality. Quote, litigation related legislation only adds to challenges cited in previous CSI's research finding that new policies enacted over the last several years have increased annual taxes and fees by over $2 billion, and that recent high inflation has cost the average Colorado household $19,300 since 2020, the report said. Wow. So when you think about it, this $19,000 for every Colorado household, that's money people need to retire, to be able to send their kids to a good school, to travel more, to live the life of their dreams. I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason why things are getting more expensive, why people's savings isn't lasting as long, and it's because of government regulations. One of the most important things we got to really acknowledge is the fact that the government is making life more expensive. Politicians are making us poor. So check that article out for any further information. But it's no surprise that Colorado regulations, fees, taxes are making it a lot harder for businesses to operate, making life more expensive and less affordable in society. But let's put the blame squarely where it belongs, and that's on the politicians, not on business, not on these other factors in society. So let's move on here. Now, another organization that is a government protected monopoly is unfortunately Xcel Energy, which is going to be hiking gas bills this winter. So very unfortunate. This is from the denvergazette.com from September 18th, 2023. Even though prices will go up in the last 3 months of the year, the company says, compared to the fourth quarter of 2022, its customers will see significant savings under its proposed rate adjustment for natural gas. Let's see. So if you don't know, Xcel Energy is basically a government monopoly. energy production could be deregulated, there could be markets provided, but unfortunately, the way the state has it set up is Xcel Energy has a lot more power than they would under a free market. Xcel Energy customers face a $66 million increase in heating bills this winter under a proposal the company submitted to Colorado's state regulators. Wow. When you think of the rising cost of everything, then you think of your heating bill going up. The energy company also seeks an expedited approval from the Public Utilities Commission. If adopted, energy regulators have routinely approved such quarterly adjustments. The new rates would take effect starting in October. The additional revenue does not necessarily translate to profits for the company's shareholders, according to the company. Those fuel costs, including the cost of wholesale natural gas, are passed directly to consumers without markup, Xcel said in a news release. Xcel Energy uses every option available to get the best prices for its customers by buying and storing energy when it is less expensive. So, I mean, that does bring up a great point. It's easy to dog on Xcel. Their name's on the bill that you get every month. But nonetheless, fuel costs, there's a big reason why those are more expensive, as we saw in the previous article. Government regulations. I mean, we've seen in Colorado this attack on our oil and gas industry, shutting down wells, limiting where natural gases can be, found, where they can be pulled out of the ground. And we're seeing it nationwide too, of course. I'm sure you've seen some news stories about lease programs being canceled for public lands and other restrictions on the ability of energy producers to pull energy out of the ground and provide it to consumers. So it's very true, especially with this attacks on natural gas, on petroleum that we've seen over the past few years and continue to see. Let's move on here. The company also emphasized that under its proposal, customers will still see their heating bills drop by as much as 35% compared to what they paid through the last 3 months of last year. So even though it's a rise, it's not as large of a rise as last year, it seems. The lower cost of wholesale natural gas compared to a year ago is driving the significant drop in energy bills, the company said. Well, that's good news. Under the proposal, the average residential gas bills for October through December would increase by 15%, $11.58 per month to $85.62. Small business natural gas bills would increase by 17%, or $51.09 per month to $356.50. Well, nonetheless, any additional costs added to consumers, to residential property, I mean, is going to be tough for a lot of people these days. All right, well, let's move on. Well, here we go. This is a local community standing up for their people, reducing property taxes without relying on the state government and without giving in to the false promises of Proposition HH. Denver7.com. Article here's from September 19th, 2023. Douglas County Commissioners approve a 4% assessment reduction for single-family properties. The reduction will save Douglas County homeowners an average of $223 on their January 2024 property tax statement, according to county officials. Now, this is great. So if you've been watching my video series with Natalie Menton on property taxes over the last few months, you know that the power to lower property taxes is at the local level. Now, of course, the state legislature can do that, as we're going to see in this article a little bit. But nonetheless, your local municipality, your special districts, your local communities can lower property taxes. To the article here. The Board of Douglas County Commissioners on Tuesday approved a 4% reduction in property value assessments for single-family residential property owners. The reduction recommendation was put forth by Douglas County Assessor Toby Damish. This year, our homeowners are experiencing the most impactful property reassessment in Colorado history. The assessed value of most homes in Douglas County increased between 30 and 60%. As a result, about 1 in every 4 homeowners in Douglas County filed an appeal. Wow. We are seeing and experiencing the desperate need for relief. Many Coloradans had sticker shock after seeing sky-high property assessments for this year. Douglas County saw the highest home value increase in the Denver metro area at 48%. The average increase for the 9 counties in the Denver metro was 39.3%. According to the county, 33,000 Douglas County property owners filed assessment appeals, a record for the county. Nearly 32,000 were related to residences, including single-family attached and detached homes, condos, and townhomes. So there you go. So, property owners can talk with county commissioners about property tax and assessments during the county's taxing authority summit. So, it's very important. Mill levies, local tax officials reducing their ability to take money away from homeowners and property owners is key. But let's go ahead and move on here. CPR.org, September 19th, 2023. Gun rights activists have lost Colorado's elections, but they may win the legal war. Just a decade ago, gun control debates at the state capitol have come with high drama, long days of passionate testimony, and loud protests. But this year, as the state house's majority Democrats pushed through yet another slate of tougher gun laws, the hearings were relatively quiet, and the opponents who came to testify were fewer than they've been in years past. Now, this is totally wrong. If anybody's what is what the assault weapons ban hearing earlier this year, I mean, this reporter should know better. I get it. There was multiple anti-gun bills that went through, like the 3-day waiting period, raising the age to purchase. Those and the new restrictions, the red flag gun confiscation expansion, yeah, those were big deals, but the assault weapons ban had one of the biggest records of people speaking out in history. And the fact that this article, the CPR news story, is downplaying the massive public outcry, the massive amount of public comment, is pretty dishonest, in my opinion. Quote, "We knew that we didn't have the votes," said Taylor Rhodes, the head of the gun rights advocacy group, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. Rhodes said he didn't monitor the bill's progress or lobby lawmakers at the state capitol on a daily basis like he has in past years. And while he did organize a grassroots effort for people to call and email their representatives, he didn't encourage members of his organization to show up in droves to testify and put pressure on lawmakers. I mean, I think that is not entirely correct. I mean, I talked to Taylor Rhodes around the time of the assault weapons ban back earlier this year, and there was a push for it. There really was. Quote, "I made a promise to my members that I was going to sue as soon as these went into law. I don't think that they took it as literal as I meant it, because of course we did sue before the ink was dry on the governor's desk." After years of political and policy setbacks, groups like RMGO see the courts as a new path forward for gun rights in Colorado, thanks to the U.S. Supreme Court's Bruin decision last year. The 6-3 ruling struck down New York's century-old public carry licensing law and set a new constitutional standard all state and federal gun laws must meet. For Rhodes and other Second Amendment advocates, the ruling opened up a promising new avenue to fight gun laws. So, as we know, this year we did see, of course, already the under 21 gun ban being stopped in court because of Rocky Mountain gun owners and their efforts. And of course, we're also going to see a lawsuit against, which we've seen. I mean, the lawsuit's already been there, but a lawsuit against the 3-day waiting period that's supposed to start here next week. So I'll be talking to Taylor Rhodes about that this next week and see where they're at in that progress. I just thought this was interesting. At the state level, Colorado is considered somewhat of a policy bright spot by reform advocates. Eileen McCarran is a co-founder of Colorado Ceasefire, a nonprofit that advocates for stricter gun laws. She said since the organization began in 2000, Colorado has enacted 23 laws and stopped over 100 bad bills from loosening gun laws. So if you've read my previous article, you know that Colorado Ceasefire is receiving taxpayer money. Go to freestatecolorado.com/ceasefire, and you'll see that they are getting taxpayer money to continue their efforts to inform people how to get red flag gun confiscation orders enacted against people in their community. But as CPR News even points out, they are a nonprofit advocating for stricter gun laws, and now they're receiving taxpayer money. Totally inappropriate. So interesting article here. Of course, there's some truth mixed in with some BS, if you ask me, in terms of the bias of the article, in terms of how this author is framing the debate, that nobody's showing up at the Capitol to testify against this gun control. It's totally and utterly dishonest. I mean, this article, they do even mention the assault weapons ban that failed. State lawmakers are still working on ideas for the next legislative session, which could include trying to bring back a proposal to ban assault weapons. That measure failed in its first committee earlier this year. Democrats have also discussed requiring the registration of firearms. It's absolutely evil, of course. But nonetheless, come on, if you knew anything about this assault weapons ban hearing and what went on that night, you know that 500 people showed up to testify in person or remote. It went till 1:30 in the morning, and the massive amount of public outcry was unlike anything that was seen in recent history at the state capitol. So for this author of this article to say that nobody's showing up at the state capitol is total and utter baloney. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. CPR.org. Why are TABOR refunds so huge lately? And will they stay that way? September 21st, 2023. Colorado is set to pay out more than $3.5 billion in TABOR refunds next spring, one of the largest paybacks that the state has ever had to return to taxpayers. So we saw that first article, right? The first article today was talking about this $2 billion increase by state government, fees, taxes, and regulations. But look how great the Taxpayer Bill of Rights is. Tabor, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, is going to return $3.5 billion to the Colorado economy, to the private sector. This means more jobs. This means more community investment. This means people are able to create businesses through entrepreneurship. Maybe people are able to retire earlier. I mean, giving money back to the people who earned it and not letting the government keep an inordinate amount is key, and that's why Tabor is so powerful. And that's why politicians like Jared Polis and his legislative lackeys, and this guy in the article, Scott Wasserman, want to take away our taxpayer bill of rights because they hate the idea of individuals being able to keep the money they earn. They think that these politicians have better use for it and have a better understanding of how this money should be spent, and they are totally and utterly wrong. In fact, the state is in the middle of what could be a record busting string of revenue years. For the first time ever, the state government could be forced to pay refunds for 6 straight years, stretching from 2022 through 2027 or longer. Those refunds are expected to average more than $2 billion per year, a level never before seen in Colorado, even in counting for inflation. Now, this guy is a total authoritarian. Quote, "We are now in a crazy, crazy Tabor surplus area," said Scott Wasserman, president of the Progressive Bell Policy Center. He thinks it's crazy. Scott Wasserman and these people who are pushing Proposition HH think it is absolutely crazy that Colorado taxpayers should be getting their money back to them. The people who earned it deserve to keep their money. But Scott Wasserman, and as you've seen from, if you watch my video this last week on who's funding Proposition HH, Bell Policy Center is right at the center of it. So it is awesome what Taxpayer Bill of Rights Tabor is able to do. It is able to send back money back into the private sector. I mean, you're talking about people under $50,000 getting 500 back, 200 back, 300 back, 359 back, getting lots of money back to their pocketbooks. And this has an exponential effect in the economy by putting taxpayer money back there and giving it back to these people who earned it. They're able to spend it, invest it, and create a better life for themselves. Now, this is huge right here, right? However, those numbers could change, especially if Proposition HH passes this November. The ballot measure is being marketed as property tax reduction, but it also contains big changes for Tabor's revenue limits. If enacted, HH would trigger a law to temporarily flatten out refunds, resulting in everyone getting an equal payout in 2024, regardless of what taxes they paid in. The universal refunds would be about $900 that year, a gain for most people, but a relative loss of thousands of dollars for wealthier taxpayers. Over a longer period of about a decade, Proposition HH could also reduce refunds by an amount ranging up to the billions of dollars, allowing the state to send much of that money to the state education fund instead. Wow. So Proposition HH steals our taxpayer refunds, puts it towards these government programs that have failed time and time again, and it's a total sham. People need to reject Proposition HH, understand the value of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights and what it can provide to individuals in our community and how much it means. I mean, to get $3.5 billion in Tabor money coming back to our state economy is massive. That's our taxpayer money that was taken by the government, over collected, and is now going to be returned. So read that article. There's a lot more information there if you're interested. Let's move on. Rocky Mountain PBS, rmpbs.org, a very left leaning, government sponsored, progressive organization, of course, as you know. This is from September 22nd, 2023. Let's zoom in a little bit here. After giving cash to 820 unhoused people, Denver Basic Income Project says the initiative is working. Well, what do you mean by working? Come on here. These people aren't working. They're just handing out taxpayer money. In this case, it was nonprofit money, but nonetheless, the plan for these people with universal basic income is to give out taxpayer money to people who didn't earn it, to shift the burden from to people who earn their money to provide for people who don't. Here's the supporters of the Denver Basic Income Project rallying outside the state capitol on Friday, September 22nd, testifying to the project's effectiveness in ending homelessness. We are the economy, they say. Serving justice, equity, and peace since 1972. I mean, these people are living in a fantasy world and have a very poor understanding of economics. So, of course, these articles like this are going to start off with a little anecdote, this story about how wonderful this person, as life has become now that they're receiving this free paycheck all of the time. But let's go ahead and skip some of that. The 820 participants are split into three groups. The first group received 12 payments of $1,000 each month. The second group received a one-time payment of $6,500 and followed by 11 monthly payments of $500. Wow. The third group, considered the control group, received 12 payments of $50 each month. Program administrators gave each participant a smartphone where their spending is tracked. We see people spending it on basic needs, and then when they have more money, they're paying down debts and investing in their future, said Mark Donovan, founder and executive director of the project. The reports are exactly what we expected. People are getting housing faster and they're getting to work faster. The project was funded by several foundations, nonprofits, and the city of Denver. So, excuse me, there was taxpayer money involved. At a rally Friday in support of the project, government officials and state activists called on Denver Mayor Michael Johnston and Denver City Council to continue funding the project for a second year, both to continue funding current participants and to expand. Wow. So, of course, there's no alternative perspective presented in this article. This article is really just talking about how wonderful it is that, we can give out taxpayer money, just tax free, total welfare, total system. I mean, it's a control system, people, right? I mean, for one, taking money away from people who didn't earn it or from people who did earn it. I mean, we just saw in previous articles these these new burdens on the economy, taxpayer refunds, all of this, people struggling to get by, and you want to take more money away from those people, the people who earn it. You want to make their work worth less and give it to these people who didn't earn it. I understand the charitable sympathies that people have. I understand the need for trying to help people in the community. But this is not the way. And to put people in the dole of the government to say, hey, listen, you just come to us, do what we say. We're going to give you this universal paycheck every month, and then you can just, live and do what you want. It's not a great idea. It's a very destructive to our social fabric, if you ask me, and to our economic system. But this is going to be an issue that's not going away. It's going to be an issue to address, and I'm going to be talking a lot about more about this in the future. Let's move on here. DenverGazette.com. Denver School Board votes to pursue lawsuit against social media platforms. September 22nd, updated 2023. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this is ridiculous. It is totally unnecessary. And of course, the school board probably thinks they're going to get some money out of it. So they're willing to shell out some money initially. Maybe they don't have to pay anything, as we'll see in the article. But nonetheless, they're going to invest their time and energy into this lawsuit, hoping to get a payout from social media platforms. Why? Well, let's see. Here's a picture of the Denver Public School Boards of Education listening to a presentation via Zoom, a founding partner with a law firm in Kansas, who, of course, is suing Google and these social media companies. The Denver Public School Boards of Education unanimously voted Thursday to retain attorneys to sue social organizations for damages over claims their platforms hurt students' mental health. So they're going to sue these organizations, these media or internet organizations, because they're hurting students' mental health. I mean, come on. For one, that's not the role of this. Even if this is true, it's not the role of the school board to be suing anybody that is hurting the mental health of their students, for one. For two, kids, take some responsibility for yourself. I mean, come on. We know social media has a bad effect, a negative impact on people's mental health, well, don't use it. If you're a parent, parents shouldn't be using it either. Parents shouldn't be having their kids on these social media platforms. But we see the school board of education, of course, trying to take the role of parents, trying to take the role of the guardian and go after these bad guys who are hurting their students. The contract will entitle attorneys to 33.3% of any financial settlement. So that's really what it's about. I mean, come on, that's totally and utterly what it's about. This is a cash grab, it's a money grab. It is totally dishonest and it's kind of shameful actually. You would not have to outlay a single penny, District Counsel Aaron Thompson told the board. Attorneys Kurt Goza with Goza, Honold in Kansas, and Joel Wright with Curtin McConkie of Utah provided a presentation to the board via Zoom. Because social media organizations like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube rely on advertising to generate revenue, and growing a company's income necessitates users returning and staying on their platforms. Well, no, I mean, come on, I almost swore there. No, no way, I mean, come on, you got to know that. Of course, any company that relies on advertising for generating revenue needs people to visit their platform. So their platforms are designed to provide people what they want, provide people with information, videos, whatever it is to get on there. If children are using these things, then it's either the child's fault or the parent's fault if you don't think the children have the agency to make those decisions for themselves. But you're blaming these social media companies, it's somehow YouTube's fault that people are getting on YouTube. Come on. God only knows what this is doing to our kids, Goza said. Well, of course, he's getting a massive payday when this lawsuit goes through. He's right, though. I mean, this does cause a serious problem. Social media distorts the brains of people. It causes some serious issues in the youth. It leads to some depression, other issues, anxiety, as they actually say here in the article, depression, anxiety. And TikTok has promoted disruptive challenges in schools that has included encouraging users to commit vandalization, theft, and make false police reports. So, of course, it's TikTok's fault that some kid gets on there, makes a video telling people to go steal something. The kid steals something. You're not blaming anybody except TikTok, of course. It's absolutely and utterly ridiculous. This behavior is not acceptable on any level, Wright said. I mean, in a way, it reminds me of the gun argument, where people are blaming guns, people are blaming these social media platforms. These young kids get on the social media and they just can't control themselves. They become these wild beings. Uh, it's pretty ridiculous. The ubiquitous nature of cell phones and students on social media has cut into classroom instruction. Well, of course. I mean, come on. Having cell phones in the schools is a bad idea. So, of course, these old trial lawyers are coming in trying to cash in on this success. Totally and utterly ridiculous. And if they really, of course, nobody believes that this lawsuit's going to solve the problem. You know what I mean? It's pretty dishonest reporting as well from the Denver Gazette. I get social media companies are easy to beat up on. They're these Goliaths with massive amounts of money. But that's what it's about. It's about taking money from them. It's about seeing what they can get out of it. Towards the bottom here, they even talk about, the East High shooting, tobacco, vaping, opioids, of course, being similar to that, suicide, brain development. This is suing these companies and getting a payday is not going to change anything. Of course, we got to take they're just using this as a dishonest way to try and to get money from these big platforms who are very successful at what they do. And of course, you shouldn't be blaming them for the actions of people who use those platforms. So, pretty ridiculous. I mean, just a total example of what's wrong in our society these days. And of course, Denver School Board getting in on the action, hoping for a slice of that pie. Let's move on. Complete Colorado, page 2. Complete Colorado, of course, you should be checking out every day. Great news aggregator gives you lots of information and original reporting. Denver should look to Colorado Springs on homelessness by John Caldera, September 20th, 2023. I've been searching for the right word to describe Mike Johnston's very earnest approach to Denver's homeless problem. The word I found is adorable. Michael is one of the most likable, affable, cuddly mayors Denver has ever had. He's the kid for whom you drive out of your way to buy a cup of his lemonade stand. You just want to pat him on the head. To solve poverty, he'll organize a nationwide bake sale, and gosh darn it, you'll almost bake a cake to the effort. Almost. It reminds me of a friend whose daughter once asked about all the poor people in the world. Her solution was, Well, why don't we just print up more money and just give it to them? Then they wouldn't be poor anymore. You can't help but get on your knees and hug a kid like that for her simple beauty and idealistic naivety. Someday, she too might grow up to be the mayor. Mayor Johnston is making good on his pledge to build micro communities in which to stick the first 1,000 of Denver's finest into their own tough shed or perma tent with common toilet facilities, showers, and kitchens. And the adorable part is he believes this is going to clean up our streets, not make the situation worse. Step 1. Throw another $52 million of subsidies to the homeless industrial complex. At the risk of breaking the heart of anyone with childlike wonder, let's revisit the first rule of economics. What you subsidize, you get more of, and what you tax, you get less of. This is a lesson we should all have learned, especially mayors, from the adorable naivety of John Hickenlooper, who kicked the homeless problem into high gear by doing the same thing. Hicks' Road Home project to end homelessness in Denver forever in 10 years, which started in 2005 and thus it ended in 2015, threw tens of millions worth of goodies to people to make living on the street more welcoming, and welcome than we did. This failed system of rewards, first known as Housing First, is the super electromagnet that pulls the drugged up, mentally ill, criminal elements to infest our streets. It helps ensure they have a safer place to lay down their heads at the end of a responsibility free day of criminal activity. After that, the plan goes, they'll be more likely to get serious about changing their lives. So, what does Colorado Springs do? Let's just scroll down here a little bit. Great article. John Caldera, of course, is a great writer. But as he talked in the article, why is the street people problem so much less just a bit south in Colorado Springs? It doesn't take too long to find out that Springs doesn't employ the housing first policy, but something closer to enforce the laws first. In other words, they enforce an urban camping ban. They enforce the laws against theft, drugs, trespassing, defecating on the sidewalk, assault, all the things that make Denver the charming destination spot it has become. The perpetrator is often given a choice: jail or a homeless shelter, which works with the city. Please note, I use the word perp because words matter. He is not an individual currently experiencing homelessness. He is a guy who perpetrated a crime and who is at taxpayer expense being given a shot to pull it together. The Springs Rescue Mission is run by a friend of mine, Jack Briggs, who operates it like the late great Bob Coate, who created Step 13, now Step Denver, giving a hand up, not a handout. Those who choose to stay at the mission see others who are building back their lives. They witness folks just like themselves living in better spaces, better apartments that others earned with money earned, not stolen. Responsibility first, then housing. The mission in Step Denver: save lives. It's a great article. Definitely check that out. I think this responsibility first should be a catchphrase, I think, for for what needs to happen in our society. Look at the articles we looked at this week. Talked about the social media lawsuit, this universal basic income they just want to hand out to people. We're creating a society in which responsibility is not valued. But responsibility needs to be valued. Personal responsibility. You're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for your life. And there you go. That's how you build a civilization of a human being, of human adults, not children, by being responsible. So let's move on here. From the DenverGazette.com, a guest column, so an opinion piece: Cherry Creek schools keep parents in the dark. Jason Haverkamp, September 22nd, 2023. You can make an argument that some school districts do a better job than others in understanding the needs of children. What you can't argue, in the opinion of many parents and at least one federal court, is that school officials have a right to hide from mom and dad the decisions their children are making, often at the behest of those very officials, particularly when the decisions are likely to have a long-term, devastating impact on those children's lives. And yet, that's the viewpoint of administrators in the Cherry Creek School District, who have actively directed teachers to keep parents in the dark when their youngsters succumb to activist pressure about changing their sexual orientation, gender identity, or preferred pronouns. For instance, one slide I saw during a training presentation made to every faculty member prior to the beginning of the school last year read, "Caution, students may not be out to their parents and other adults in their lives. They may be testing the waters here at school. Asking questions is always better than assuming." I saw that slide because for 2 years I taught in the Cherry Creek district until administrators there failed to renew my contract for this year. That was certainly their choice to make. But since I received excellent evaluations for those first 2 years and across a 15-year career as a successful teacher and administrator, I can't help wondering if it had something to do with my outspoken objections to this don't tell the parents policy. Wow. My objections were based on three concerns. One, my personal religious beliefs that from the beginning of creation, God made us male and female. For me as a teacher to affirm that each of us gets to choose for ourselves what sex we really are and will be, all biology to the contrary, would mean denying my Christian faith. It would also mean lying to my students, and it would mean encouraging something a growing number of scientists, doctors, and therapists believe is profoundly harmful to children. What's more, as a parent myself, I believe it's up to my wife and me to determine what's best for our children, encouraging them and equipping them to live healthy and productive lives. No teacher has the right to hijack that authority and responsibility from us. My second concern is professional. As a teacher, I already have a long list of responsibilities that pertain directly to my role as an educator. To all that, Cherry Creek officials added a formidable list of new politically correct obligations. So check that article out. Of course, as we've seen, recently, in recent weeks, it's not just Cherry Creek. We've seen this exact same thing happen in Jefferson County, where teachers, administrators, the teachers union has a plan in place actively telling their teachers not to tell parents about what's going on with their children at schools, especially when it says something as potentially devastating or as potentially dangerous or as potentially life-changing as a child wanting to change their gender through use of drugs and other means. So check that out. It's very unfortunate what's going on in public schools. Get your kids out of public schools if at all possible. I think school choice is going to be one of the big issues for the liberty movement in the future. I think that's a great opportunity to win. Last I want to talk about, of course, was yesterday on September 23rd, was the equinox, the equal day and equal night. I think it's really important to recognize the natural cycles of the earth in some ways, especially in terms of the changing of the seasons. This idea that now the days are going to be shorter than the nights is something that's very interesting and profound in terms of human history. So, of course, the night will continue to grow in length until the winter solstice, the longest day of the year, in December around Christmas time, and then we're back to the days growing longer. But I think it's important just to recognize these natural cycles and see how they impact our lives. You know, it's not all about politics. It's not all about paying attention to what the politicians and the government is doing. It's also about living life in accordance with the natural beauty that we have and the natural cycles of the earth. So I thought that was interesting. Had this little article on it from a few years back, but I just wanted to bring that up. And now, if you have a chance on freestatecolorado.com, check out my latest Where's the Money Coming From? Exposing the money behind Proposition HH. This has been one of the most popular videos I've done this year. Natalie Menton, the great liberty activist, joined me to kind of deep dive. It's about an hour-long video, so I understand it's a big commitment, but we really go into who these people are, who is spending $800,000 to push Proposition HH on Colorado taxpayers. I think it's very interesting to see who's involved, to see where the money's coming from, who are the individuals that are out there, what else have they worked on. It really gives you a better picture. And of course, all the references that are listed in the video are on freestatecolorado.com. So check that out. But I want to thank you very much for joining me this next week. I got some really cool interviews coming up. Taylor Rhodes on the lawsuit to stop the 3-day gun ban or the 3-day waiting period. And then also Jeffrey Roberts from the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition to talk about Colorado Sunshine Laws and some opportunities and challenges that we face in terms of understanding how our government's behaving. So thank you very much. Take care, and we'll see you next.